Chapter 26:11. Not to mention snatching the Tianluo grass from them. It was fine if he didn't show up. Wouldn't it be easier to kill him after they obtained the Tianluo grass? In short, they couldn't let him leave this abandoned continent no matter what. While Chu Yuqing and the others were overjoyed, Zhang Beiyue and the others had already sensed the heart of the continent's trembling. Young master, the heart of the continent's energy tide is erupting. The heart of the continent has opened. The group of people were conserving their energy. Hearing this, Zhang Beiyue's tightly shut eyes opened immediately. Get ready. Once the energy tide is over, we'll head to the heart of the continent immediately. He didn't care about the Tianluo grass. Geniuses like Zhang Beiyue had already gotten the chance to consume the Tianluo grass. After all, although it was rare, it wasn't so rare that it was hard to find. As a powerful family in the 3-star Great Heaven domain, it wasn't difficult for the Zhang family to obtain a few Tianluo grass. However, the opportunity to obtain the primordial divine item was hard to come by. The Zhang family had only gotten a few words by chance. They guessed that the primordial divine item might exist on this abandoned continent, but they couldn't be completely sure. In order not to alert the enemy, they had sent the most elite geniuses of the family. Otherwise, given the Zhang family's strength, they could easily flatten the entire flying star field. Why would they only send a few people? It was just a cover-up. Zhang Beiyue and the others had been guarding this abandoned continent for more than half a year. Now that the heart of the continent had opened, they couldn't miss it. When Zhang Beiyue gave the order, the people of the demonic moon sect had also sensed the trembling of the heart of the continent. They were instantly overjoyed. Hee, the heart of the continent has opened. I wonder if the primordial divine item's existence is real. Their gazes were drooling as they looked at the place where the energy tide had erupted. Their greed was unspeakable. However, when they thought of Yu Mingxuan's unfathomable methods, their expressions froze. Given Yu Mingxian's methods, if he wanted this ancient divine object, they wouldn't even have a share in it. During this time, everyone had fully experienced Yu Mingxuan's methods. The elixirs he had given them, and the inscription patterns he had drawn on their bodies were extremely useful. Everyone's strength had completely recovered. Not only that, because of the existence of the inscription patterns, their strength had increased by quite a bit. The same amount of strength had increased by many times through the inscription patterns on their bodies. Feeling that they were displaying strength that was completely beyond their own, everyone felt an indescribable excitement in their hearts. At the same time, they feared Yu Mingxian. However, they were extremely unwilling to give up on the primordial divine object just like that. Boss, do you think that after we capture that young man, we can use him to threaten that person and force him to give up that ancient divine object? Will he be willing to do so? A demonic moon sect member said to the leader beside him. The latter's face turned grave for a moment, but soon he began to laugh coldly. B. Chapter 26:12. The leader of the evil moon sect was very pleased with himself as he said this. If the news about the ancient divine object was fake, then they would obediently work for Yu Mingquan and capture that young man and hand him over to him. However, if the ancient divine object was real, then they would use that young man's life to threaten the other party. Since the other party had gone through so much trouble just to capture that young man, they would definitely not let him die so easily. Since that was the case, they had room to maneuver. If the other party wanted to use them, then they had to be prepared to be bitten in the back. After all, these people were untrustworthy and unscrupulous people from the evil path. The sneer on the evil moon sect leader's face became even more obvious as he thought about this. On the other side, Yu Mingquan smirked as he shattered the spirit mirror in his hand. A bunch of reckless people. He did not care about these people from the evil moon sect, but the ancient divine object in the heart of the continent. He looked at the energy tide in front of him, which seemed unusually tyrannical and full of vitality. He wanted that ancient divine object. And he also wanted Luo Qingtong. The energy storm in the heart of the continent raged for a full 7 days. During these 7 days, all the decaying spirit energy in the entire abandoned continent had been cleansed. The air was filled with spirit energy that was full of vitality. This was the power of the great path contained in the heart of the continent. Every year, the heart of the continent opened, and the remaining spirit flowers and spirit herbs absorbed this energy tide. By absorbing this energy, they could continue to maintain their vitality and strength in this abandoned continent. The magical beasts and demonic plants that had mutated and could only rely on the decaying spiritual energy to survive also appeared on the ground at this moment, absorbing the rare vitality and energy hungrily. Although they could only rely on the decaying spirit energy to survive, this rare vitality and power was the source of their strength. If they wanted to break through their own boundary barriers, the decaying spirit energy would not be able to do so. Only this energy, which contained the power of the great path, could do so. Therefore, during these 7 days, the sounds of countless demonic beasts and monster plants leveling up could be heard incessantly. There were also sharp and resounding roars from the demonic beasts and monster plants. During these 7 days, Luo Qingtong and the others all left their original campsite and went underground to avoid the demonic beasts and monster plants that rushed up to the surface. Luo Qingtong and the others would be crazy to go against all the demonic beasts and monster plants on the abandoned continent. It would be a small matter if they were attacked by all the demonic beasts and monster plants on the continent. It would be a tragedy if they missed the opportunity to enter the heart of the continent in 7 days. However, as Luo Qingtong looked at the raging energy storm, she felt that this scene was familiar. She thought about this for a long time. Then, she suddenly remembered that in the True Spill continent, when the southern domain had been ravaged by energy storms, it had also been like this. But it was far from being as vast as this. As Luo Qingtong thought of this, her heart skipped a beat. An idea popped up in her mind. However, when she carefully searched for it, she couldn't find it for a while. Her brows were tightly knitted as she kept thinking about this matter. Chapter 26:13. Boom! Outside, the raging tide of energy came to an abrupt end. All the demonic beasts and plants disappeared in an instant. They had absorbed enough vitality and power, so they were all hiding and continuing to refine and break through. Luo Qingtong and the others immediately took action. Let's go to the heart of the continent. Chu Xiaofeng's voice was very excited. The fight for the Tianluo grass this time was the highlight of their trip to the abandoned continent. Now that the dust had settled, it was time for these people to return to their families. Chu Xiaofeng had relied on Luo Qingtong to obtain a large number of spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs. Even during the time they were temporarily stationed here, he had relied on Luo Qingtong's guidance to find a lot of spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs nearby. He had also cooperated with Gu Yifeng and the others to kill a lot of demonic beasts and plants. His own strength had been greatly tempered. Under such circumstances, he had achieved all his goals in coming to the abandoned continent. It didn't matter whether he had the Tianluo grass or not. In any case, he had no chance among the top disciples. Even so, he had to go and take a look. After all, it was an important day for the disciples of the Tianfeng Chu family and the Flying Star Lian family to compete. It would be a pity if he didn't go and take a look. However, he didn't know that 2 people in his team were going for the Tianluo grass. In fact, they were aiming for something in the heart of the continent. Brother, let's go. Luo Qingtong didn't care about her previous entanglement with Yi Qianxian. Anyway, this was an urgent matter. And this man wouldn't ask her about trivial matters like sleeping. Yes, that was what Luo Qingtong thought. Otherwise, she would still be in the team of the Red Flame mercenaries. During these 7 days, Luo Qingtong and Ouyang were inseparable. At the same time, she finally understood why no one dared to approach Ouyang at night. Damn it, he's got 2 personalities. At night, Ouyang would become another person. The originally seductive and coquettish woman would turn into a noble and cold woman after dark. She didn't like to talk, and would attack anyone who came within 3 feet of her. Even Ouyang weapon was custom-made. During the day, the passionate and coquettish woman wielded a long sword. At night, the long sword would be split into 2, turning into 2 short blades. When Luo Qingtong approached Ouyang on the first night, she was almost stabbed in the heart by the 2 daggers. If it weren't for her blood pupil's quick reaction and stopping Ouyang Yingyu's attack at the same time, she would have bled at that moment. After dark, Ouyang Yingyu was a natural assassin, as if she lived for the night. Luo Qingtong and Ouyang Yingyu exchanged moves for a whole night. Every time, Ouyang Yingyu only blocked and did not attack. Only then did Ouyang Yingyu acknowledge her. "Oh no, it's Ouyang Mingya." That night, after discovering that she couldn't hurt Luo Qingtong no matter what, the cold personality told her her real name. Luo Qingtong knew that Ouyang Yingyu turned out to have a dual personality. Moreover, the personality hidden after dark turned out to be such a bloodthirsty and cold personality. Chapter 26:14. After all, no one wanted to be hunted down with 2 daggers in the middle of the night, right? Luo Qingtong's lips twitched. As for Yi Qianren, he didn't say anything as he watched her walk towards him. The heart of the continent had been opened. Even if Luo Qingtong didn't walk up to him and leave with him, he would still capture her and imprison her by his side regardless of whether she was willing or not. After all, Luo Qingtong's safety was more important than anything else. Wasn't the reason why he cared about Luo Xiaoqi very simple? He had accepted Luo Qingtong's protection fee during this period of time. Wasn't it his duty to take care of her for those spirit herbs and flowers? Yi Qianxian should really be glad that Luo Qingtong had come up with all sorts of excuses to get close to him. Now that he was taking care of this woman, it wasn't abrupt at all. "Yes, come here." Yi Qianxian raised his hand and pulled Luo Qingtong to his side. He resisted the urge to pull her into his arms and protect her. With a wave of his sleeve, Yi Qianxian flew up and headed for the heart of the continent with Chu Xiaofeng and the others. And on the abandoned continent, there were many figures like them who directly rushed over. The members of the Heavenly Wind Chu clan and the Flying Star Lian clan, who had entered the abandoned continent to train and kill the devil beasts and demonic plants, as well as plucking spirit flowers and spirit herbs, all flew into the air and charged towards the heart of the continent with their guards. Especially the top disciples. This time the highlight of the show was them. Of course, they didn't rule out the possibility of others picking up scraps in the chaos. Therefore the other disciples all rushed to the heart of the continent as well. After the battle for the Tianluo grass came to an end, the competition between the 2 clans had come to an end. Whoosh! Whoosh! When Luo Qingtong's group arrived at the heart of the continent, there were already some teams waiting there. The 2 teams were clearly separated, and they stood at the entrance to the heart of the continent, where the surging mist and lingering spiritual qi had yet to dissipate. They stood on guard against each other. They are from the Lian family of the Flying Star sector. Luo Qingtong looked at the people in front of her, who were wearing the Chu clan's uniform. She saw that they were all wearing the same uniform with the word Lian embroidered on their chest. This was the first time that Luo Qingtong had met a member of the Lian family of the Flying Star clan, since she came to the abandoned continent. The Flying Star Lian clan and the Tianfeng Chu clan had entered the abandoned continent from the same place. However, the locations where they landed were all different. From the looks of it, the 2 clans must have discussed this from the very beginning. During the first few days of training, the disciples of the 2 clans would not interfere with each other. They would fight again when it was time to fight for the Tianluo grass. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been so coincidental that Luo Qingtong's group had run into members of the Chu clan after entering the abandoned continent. The 2 clans must have divided their activity areas, so that it would be difficult for them to run into each other from the very beginning. When Luo Qingtong looked at the members of the Flying Star Lian clan, the deadlocked crowd heard the whoosh and looked over at Luo Qingtong's group. Chu Xiaofeng. Chapter 26:15. A person who was obviously a top disciple stepped forward and said, "Come over here." His tone was full of superiority and superiority. These top disciples usually wouldn't have any interactions with the disciples below them. The resources and cultivation places they enjoyed were all of the best. They weren't in the same place as Chu Xiaofeng and the others at all. The reason why they stopped Chu Xiaofeng and the others was that they were going to fight against the Flying Star Lian family. The people of the Tianfeng Chu family naturally had to gather together. Luo Qingtong looked at the top disciple of the Tianfeng Chu family. Chu Xiaofeng's voice rang in her ears. Little 7. This person is the top disciple of the second elder of the Tianfeng Chu family, Chu Qiankong. The top disciple beside him is the top disciple of the first elder's line, Chu Yuanhong. These two people won't participate in the competition for the successor of the family head. They have no conflict with us. Let's go over first. Chu Xiaofeng first explained the identities of these two people to Luo Qingtong, to prevent any conflict between them and Luo Qingtong. The first elder and second elder's line had always been the protectors of the Tianfeng Chu family. Their successor would enter the elder council and directly become an elder of the family. They wouldn't participate in the competition for the family head. There was no conflict of interest with the eighth elder's line, which was the protector of the family head. Chu Xiaofeng had been worried that after arriving here, he would first encounter the third elder's line or the sixth elder's line. If that happened, it would be another troublesome matter. After all, Chu Tianming, Chu Ku'er, and the others had suffered a great loss at their hands. Especially Luo Qingtong. He wasn't afraid of Chu Ku'er and Chu Tianming causing trouble. The eighth elder's line wasn't without people. However, Luo Qingtong was a mercenary. He might not be able to protect her. Hence, Chu Xiaofeng heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that the people here were from the first elder and second elder's side. At the same time, he also informed Luo Qingtong about the situation of these two families, so that she would know what to do. In fact, the current situation was very advantageous for Luo Qingtong. No matter how one looked at it, if the Heavenly Wind Chu clan wanted to fight against the Flying Star Lian clan, they had to be united. Under such circumstances, if Chu Ku'er and the others came to cause trouble for Luo Qingtong, the others would stop them. As Chu Xiaofeng thought of this, he immediately led Luo Qingtong and the others towards where Chu Qiankong and Chu Yuanhong were. When Chu Qiankong saw Chu Xiaofeng and the others approaching, he turned his head and ignored them. For top disciples like them, if it weren't for the fact that they needed to fight against the Flying Star Lian clan, he wouldn't even look at Chu Xiaofeng and the others, let alone speak to them. However, the Flying Star Lian clan's people took another look at Chu Xiaofeng and the others. Or rather, they were looking at Luo Qingtong. Chu Qiankong and the others didn't notice, but they could see that Chu Xiaofeng and the others were a little strange. The people of the Red Flame Mercenary Corps and the others were protecting Chu Xiaofeng, but Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others were protecting Luo Qingtong tightly. Not only that, even Chu Xiaofeng's subconscious actions just now seemed to be treating Luo Qingtong as the backbone of the group. Chapter 26:16. He didn't know if it was just his imagination, but he felt that this group of white-masked men wasn't simple. This man wore a silver robe with fragmentary gold stars. It was the standard uniform of the Flying Star Lian family's top disciples. Not only that, but he was also surrounded by a group of top disciples. It was obvious that he was their leader. While this man's gaze was on Luo Qingtong and the others, on the other side, the sound of rushing wind could be heard. Chu Yuqing and the others had arrived. Bastard, it's you, Chu Yuqing, and the other top disciples arrived. When he saw Luo Qingtong and Chu Xiaofeng's group, his eyes instantly turned red. With a whoosh, he launched an attack at Luo Qingtong. However, before his attack could reach Luo Qingtong, Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others blocked it. Seeing his attack disappear in midair, Chu Yuqing was furious. He prepared to continue attacking Luo Qingtong. At the same time, he ordered the guards behind him to attack Luo Qingtong as well. At that moment, Chu Xiaofeng stepped in front of Luo Qingtong. Chu Yuqing, what are you doing? Chu Xiaofeng glared at Chu Yuqing. He glanced at Chu Tianming, Chu Ku'er, and the others behind him. Thinking that Chu Yuqing wanted to avenge Chu Ku'er and the others, he immediately shouted, Luo Xiaoqi is my guard. Chu Yuqing, even if you want to avenge Chu Ku'er and the others, you should look at the situation first. Our 8th Elder's faction won't let others bully us without retaliating. Chu Xiaofeng's voice rang out. Chu Qiankong and Chu Yuanhong immediately frowned and turned to look in his direction. What's going on? Chu Qiankong's expression was displeased. The flying star Lian family was watching, but his own family was having an internal conflict. They couldn't afford to lose face like that. It's Chu Yuqing. He wants to attack my mercenaries. It seems that the third elder's faction doesn't like our eighth elder's faction. That's why their top disciples want to personally take action and vent their anger on my subordinates. Chu Xiaofeng was the first to answer. He was striking first to gain the initiative. He directly elevated Chu Yuqing's matter to the grudge between the eighth elder and third elder's factions. In any case, everyone knew of his conflict with Chu Ku'er. Not only that, but when they were outside, the eighth elder's faction and the third elder's faction's faction. What was he afraid of? Luo Qingtong had helped him so much along the way, so it was only right for him to help her. Chu Xiaofeng's Chu Yuqing was furious. Otherwise, don't blame me for making you beg for death in the future. But at a time like this, he absolutely couldn't reveal that he'd tried to kill Chu Lingfeng in front of everyone. He also couldn't use this as a reason to attack Luo Qingtong. But he wouldn't let Luo Qingtong off so easily. It was this youth who'd appeared out of nowhere, relying on his strange thread-like martial arts, who'd prevented him from attacking Chu Lingfeng. Otherwise, given that fool's scheming, he'd have long since fallen into his hands and been killed by him. This youth, Chu Yuqing, had long since learned of Luo Qingtong's identity from Chu Ku'er and the others. He hadn't expected that she'd actually dare to appear in front of them. He swept his gaze over the group and didn't see Chu Lingfeng's figure. He immediately calmed down. With Chu Lingfeng's injuries, he was probably still struggling at death's door, right? Chapter 26:17. Beside Luo Qingtong, Yi Qianxian narrowed his eyes at Chu Yuqing's words. He coldly glanced at Chu Yuqing, the light in his eyes exceptionally frigid. Make his woman suffer a fate worse than death? This Chu Yuqing really dared to say such things. He was going to wait here and see how he was going to make his woman suffer a fate worse than death. Yi Qianxian's gaze was icy. Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others looked at Chu Yuqing as if they were looking at a dead man. When Chu Xiaofeng heard Chu Yuqing's words, he too was enraged. Listen carefully, the two of you. It's someone from the third elder's faction who insists on making trouble for the eighth elder's faction. He spoke with decisiveness that could sever nails and chop iron. When Chu Qiankong and the others heard this, they immediately frowned and looked at Chu Yuqing. They said in a low voice, Chu Yuqing is just a mercenary. Why do you have to make things so ugly here? As he spoke, he glanced discreetly at the Lian family. His meaning was clear. He wanted Chu Yuqing to consider the bigger picture. But Luo Qingtong had ruined Chu Yuqing's plans. How could he let her off so easily? Besides, he needed her to find out Chu Lingfeng's whereabouts. Only then would he be able to find Chu Lingfeng as quickly as possible after the fight for the Skynet grass and kill him. That way, he wouldn't be able to tell the family elders that he'd ambushed and killed him. Thus, he completely ignored Chu Qiankong's hints. You said it yourself. She's just a mercenary. So I don't have the right to punish her? Chu Yuqing sneered, his expression overbearing. You don't need to persuade me. Unless she comes out of her own accord and surrenders herself, don't blame me for taking action. If you have the time to persuade me, why don't you tell Chu Xiaofeng to get lost? Otherwise, if I hurt him and make a fool of myself, I won't care. Chu Yuqing's voice was icy. It could be seen that he was determined to make a move against Luo Qingtong. He did not even give face to Chu Qiankong and the others. Both sides were top-notch disciples. If a fight broke out, the situation would be even uglier. As Chu Qiankong and the others thought of this, they immediately frowned. They looked at Chu Yuqing, then turned to Chu Xiaofeng and said, Have your people leave. Their intentions were very clear. They wanted Chu Xiaofeng to ignore Luo Qingtong and let her go out to help Chu Yuqing vent his anger. After all, he was just a mercenary. There was no need for him to cause internal strife in the Tianfeng Chu clan and become a joke to others. Chu Xiaofeng's expression instantly sank when he heard what Chu Qiankong and the others said. This is impossible, he said in a deep voice. Have Luo Qingtong go out and help Chu Yuqing vent his anger? He could not do such a cowardly thing. Moreover, the reason why Luo Qingtong had offended Chu Ku'er was also because of him. How could he not care about Luo Qingtong? As Chu Xiaofeng thought of this, he immediately said coldly to Chu Qiankong and the others, "It's clearly third elders people who are causing trouble for eighth elders people. Yet you want me to hand over my people? If I do as you say, how can eighth elders people raise their heads in the Tianfeng Chu clan in the future?" "You don't need to say anything else," Chu Xiaofeng said in a deep voice. Chu Xiaofeng said in a deep voice, "Since you two can't uphold justice for our eighth elders people, then I won't force you. But you want me to hand over my people? Absolutely impossible." Chapter 26:18. Chu Xiaofeng, you don't know what's good for you. Your people offended a top disciple. We're helping you by asking you to hand her over. Since you're so ungrateful, then you'll be in trouble with her. Get out of the way. Chu Qiankong's voice was icy cold. These top disciples didn't care about the disciples of the Tianfeng Chu clan in the first place. If it had been one of the top disciples of the eighth elder who spoke, they might have interfered with Chu Yuqing to prevent the situation from becoming too ugly. But who did Chu Xiaofeng think he was? It was already good enough that they were willing to let him hand over Luo Xiaoqi. Since he didn't want to, then he'd be in trouble with Luo Xiaoqi. She dared to oppose a top disciple. If it weren't for the fact that they were on the abandoned continent, and the Lian family didn't want to make a fool of themselves, they would have dealt with Luo Qingtong themselves. Chu Yuqing didn't even need to do anything. Who asked her, as the lowest mercenary, to dare to go against a top disciple? The dignity of a top disciple wasn't to be blasphemed. Chu Qiankong's words immediately caused the disciples of the first elders and second elders factions to all take a step back, allowing Chu Xiaofeng and the others to face Chu Yuqing and the others on their own. But unexpectedly, the mercenaries behind those disciples didn't retreat. They glanced hesitantly at Luo Qingtong and Chu Qiankong's group, then gritted their teeth and stood behind Luo Qingtong. "My apologies, young masters. Luo Xiaoqi has done us a great favor. We're definitely on her side this time." It wasn't that the mercenaries didn't fear the Tianfeng Chu clan, but Luo Qingtong had helped them a lot. Besides, wasn't Chu Xiaofeng in Luo Qingtong's group? They weren't completely opposed to the Tianfeng Chu clan. If they didn't stand up now, they were afraid they'd never be able to live with themselves. The group of mercenaries all lived by licking blood from the edge of the blade. In this life, there was nothing that could be ignored except for friendship. In this abandoned continent, they had received great kindness from Luo Qingtong and obtained a lot of information about this abandoned continent. Not to mention, Luo Qingtong had provided them with some plans and methods to complete missions in Mercenary City, which had greatly reduced their casualties. If Luo Qingtong only offended the Tianfeng Chu family, they might not stand up for their own interests. But now, Chu Yuqing clearly wasn't going to let Luo Qingtong off. Under such circumstances, everyone had to stand up and support her no matter what. A group of people stood behind Luo Qingtong. Chu Xiaofeng and the other children of the Chu family were somewhat stunned. The members of the Red Flame Mercenary Corps and the other mercenaries behind him took a step forward and patted the mercenaries on their shoulders. "Haha, I knew you would stand out. That's right. Young Master Xiaoqi has done us a great favor. How can we not stand out?" Those mercenaries who came from the Great Elders and Second Elders branches snorted coldly. "Do you think you're the only ones who know how to repay kindness?" The mercenaries cast sidelong glances at Gu Yifeng and the others. These guys didn't retreat either, right? Chapter 26:19. What a joke! They weren't any less hot-blooded than these people. They couldn't possibly allow others to point at them and call them cowards in the future. The atmosphere was joyous and harmonious. When Chu Yuqing saw this scene, he was so angry that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. What made him even angrier was that most of the mercenaries behind the Tianfeng Chu clan disciples had also walked behind Luo Qingtong. These mercenaries had signed an agreement with the Tianfeng Chu clan until the fight for the Tianluo grass began. Now that the heart of the continent had been opened, they no longer needed to listen to the orders of the Tianfeng Chu clan disciples. Thus, when they saw that Chu Yuqing was making things difficult for Luo Qingtong and wasn't willing to give up, they immediately walked out. The law couldn't punish the majority, so the mercenaries all gathered together. They weren't afraid that the Tianfeng Chu clan people would settle accounts with them after the autumn. The Tianfeng Chu clan people wouldn't purge Tianfeng Mercenary City, right? Even if the Tianfeng Chu clan people could do it, they wouldn't do it just because of Chu Yuqing's grudges and methods. Besides, they still had Chu Xiaofeng on their side. This wasn't just a grudge between them and the Tianfeng Chu clan. It was a grudge between the 8th elder and the 3rd elder. Because of this, the mercenaries didn't hesitate in the slightest as they walked out. Except for those who were not on good terms with Luo Qingtong, those from the Black Iron mercenary group, and those mercenary groups that were on good terms with them, the others all walked behind Luo Qingtong. In an instant, a large wave of people and power had gathered behind Luo Qingtong. This power wasn't inferior to the power behind Chu Yuqing and the others. It was just that Chu Yuqing and the others were top-notch disciples, so the ranks of their guards were much higher than the mercenaries. Otherwise, Luo Qingtong would have been able to overwhelm them with just the number of people and power she had gathered. Bastard! Chu Yuqing's expression was extremely gloomy. He'd originally wanted to force Luo Qingtong to turn her back on her friends and family. Without Chu Xiaofeng and the others to help her, it would be easy for him to deal with the other party. Who would have thought that such a small mercenary would have such high prestige in the Heavenly Wind Mercenary City? He was just a young man who hadn't even reached the exalted realm. How could he make the mercenaries of Heavenly Wind Mercenary City so obedient and obedient? Chu Yuqing's expression was one of anger. Chu Ku'er, Chu Yufei, and the others had been paying attention to Luo Qingtong. She watched as the mercenaries came out one by one to support Luo Qingtong. Everyone's faces were indescribably twisted. How could this be? Luo Xiaoqi is such a bitch. How can she command so many mercenaries? Chu Ku'er's voice was sharp. She almost couldn't control herself and screamed. But even so, her voice was still a deep growl. At the same time, she grabbed Chu Yufei's hand tightly. Chu Yufei's hand was so tight that the back of her hand was about to bleed. But Chu Yufei didn't seem to notice. She bit her lip and looked in Luo Qingtong's direction. Her face was filled with unwillingness. She'd thought that Luo Qingtong wouldn't be able to escape. She hadn't expected that she would be able to gain the support of these mercenaries. But so what if that was the case? If she'd only offended them, then Chu Yuqing would have stopped when he saw this scene. Chapter 26:20. Although the mercenaries around her were strong, how could they be a match for the guards behind Chu Yuqing and the other top disciples? Thinking of this, Chu Yufei sneered again. Feng Yu, Bei Qing, and the others were also stunned when they saw so many mercenaries walking over. The evil physician is indeed the evil physician. They murmured in their hearts. If anyone else had encountered such a situation, they would have died a long time ago. Yet, the evil physician always had unexpected things happening. These mercenaries were actually so supportive of the evil physician. How could any random person do such a thing? After all, how long had Luo Qingtong stayed in Mercenary City? Wasn't her prestige a little too high? Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others had always known that Luo Qingtong was powerful, but they didn't expect her to be so powerful. For ordinary people, if they were suddenly teleported from a 9-star star field, or even from a low-level continent to a high-rank star field, they would be lucky if they could keep themselves alive. How could they be like Luo Qingtong, who was able to survive in a 6-star region despite her lowly strength? Everyone had chased after Luo Qingtong all the way here. Whether it was in Heavenly Wind Inscription City, Heavenly Wind Mercenary City, or this abandoned continent, they were all impressed by Luo Qingtong's methods. In their entire lives, they would probably only meet one extraordinary woman like the evil physician. Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others were all amazed. Yi Qianxian tilted his head slightly and looked at the young man beside him. He held back his gaze and didn't say anything. Otherwise, he might not be able to stop himself from pulling Luo Qingtong into his arms and holding her tightly. This was the woman he had his eyes on. Even if he wasn't by her side, even if she was in a dangerous situation, she would still be able to deal with it calmly. This kind of Luo Qingtong made Yi Qianxian love and feel proud of her. He was also very worried about his gains and losses. This woman was like the wind. He always felt that if he didn't hold her tightly, she would disappear without a trace. Yet, she was so powerful that Yi Qianxian really couldn't do anything to her. Usually, it was others who admired him, worried about his gains and losses, and loved him so much that they died because of him. Only when it was his turn did he know how difficult it was to fall in love with someone. Yi Qianxian's gaze deepened. Luo Qingtong looked at the mercenaries standing behind her with a look of surprise. She didn't expect these people to stand by her side. Previously, when she helped them, she was indeed thinking of borrowing their strength when the fight for the Tianluo grass began. But at that time, she only thought that if they didn't do anything to her, she would have a chance to fish in troubled waters. She didn't expect that they would stand by her side when she faced with danger. Sure enough, they were the most loyal and righteous people. Although these mercenaries were despised by those big powers and aristocratic families for having shallow foundations and being uncouth, in Luo Qingtong's eyes, they were much better than those big powers and aristocratic families who spoke of righteousness, but in the end, stabbed her in the back. At least these people knew what it meant to repay kindness. Luo Qingtong glanced at these people, then looked at Chu Yuqing. She hadn't said a word since the other party had opened his mouth. It wasn't that she had nothing to say, but that she was too lazy to say anything. With Yi Qianxian and the others here, Luo Qingtong knew that she wouldn't be in any danger. Thus, she couldn't be bothered to pay attention to Chu Yuqing and let him perform his one-man show. Chapter 26-21. Young Master Yuqing. Luo Qingtong's expression was indifferent. The words young Master Yuqing were spoken in an unusually cold and sarcastic tone. Just when everyone thought that she was admitting defeat, and that Chu Yuqing had already prepared himself to act all high and mighty, Luo Qingtong's cold voice rang out. You talk too much nonsense. Didn't you say you'd make me beg for death? I'll wait for you. She smiled at Chu Yuqing. She'd been pretending to be a rabbit for too long. She almost thought she was a rabbit. But even if she was a rabbit, she was still a little white rabbit with steel teeth. If Chu Yuqing wanted to deal with her, he'd have to grit his teeth until they broke. Luo Qingtong sneered. With the people behind her, even if Yi Qianxian and the others didn't make a move, she could still toy with Chu Yuqing and the others. If you don't believe me, why don't you try? The moment Luo Qingtong said that, everyone around was dumbfounded. Luo Qingtong had respectfully addressed Chu Yuqing as young Master Yuqing. Just to say such words? Wasn't she deliberately provoking Chu Yuqing? He wasn't going to let her go. Now that he was angered by her, he probably wouldn't care about anything else. This Luo Xiaoqi, had she gone crazy? This thought flashed through the minds of the Tianfeng Chu family members. Gu Yifeng and the others were also very stunned. They'd never heard Luo Qingtong speak in such a domineering manner. They didn't know why, but it was quite moving to listen to. Haha. Well said, Xiaoqi. Hu Zhan slapped Luo Qingtong on the shoulder and laughed heartily. I told you before, we men have to be strong. You used to be so soft, but now you're being bullied. That's good. You're finally acting like a man. Luo Qingtong's lips twitched at Hu Zhan's words. Who was acting like a man? She was clearly domineering. However, Hu Zhan's words helped her explain that her change was not sudden. Luo Qingtong didn't want to tolerate Chu Yuqing any longer. But if possible, she didn't want Yi Qianxian to discover her identity. After this trip to the abandoned continent, it would be best to reunite with Yi Qianxian. At that time, she would have to appease Yi Qianxian properly. Otherwise, this man would definitely explode. As Luo Qingtong thought of this, she felt guilty again. However, she did not know that she had been discovered long ago. Yi Qianren looked at her deeply and didn't say anything. Let this woman continue to pretend. How could it be so easy to pay back all those debts? The two of them had different thoughts. As for Chu Yuqing, after hearing Luo Qingtong's words, his face immediately turned the color of a pig's liver. When Hu Zhan's voice rang out, his expression turned even darker. Good. He looked at Luo Qingtong and the others and said the word good twice in a row. His swollen face and temples showed at a glance that he was suppressing his anger and killing intent. You're very good. Since you're in a hurry to die, I'll fulfill your wish. As he spoke, he sternly shouted, Chu Hanyu, help me capture her. Chu Hanyu was the name of one of the ninth elder's top disciples. Chu Yuqing's words meant that he wanted these top disciples to help him capture Luo Qingtong and kill Gu Yifeng and the others. Since these people wanted to help Luo Xiaoqi, they should be prepared to die. Did they really think that he wouldn't dare touch them, just because they were on Chu Xiaofeng's side? Chapter 26-22. Chu Yuqing sneered and raised his hand, ordering the guards behind him to rush forward. The guards of Chu Hanyu and the others beside him also moved. However, just as they rushed out, a thunderous explosion resounded in everyone's ears. Let's see who dares to touch her. As he spoke, a figure swept over from the distance like a whirlwind. In an instant, it appeared in front of Luo Qingtong and the others. In an instant, a guard who was about to approach Luo Qingtong and the others was blasted away by the figure. Roar! Following the roar of the figure, everyone discovered that the figure was riding a giant white beast. The giant beast's 4 limbs were on the ground. Its fur was elegant and smooth, and it had a long fluffy tail that swayed in the air. It had a pair of reddish-gold eyes that looked exceptionally noble and domineering. Sitting on its back was a man wearing a pale blue robe. The robe on his body also looked very wild and domineering. His eyes were red with anger, and he looked at Chu Yuqing and the others with the same ferocity of a wild beast. You dare hurt me? Chu Lingfeng's expression was fierce. He was just about to say the word master, when he remembered Luo Qingtong's previous warning. She had told him not to reveal her identity in front of others, and he immediately swallowed the words back down. He said coldly, You dare hurt my people? You're courting death. Luo Qingtong heard his words and felt her stomach twist. Where did this guy learn to make such a domineering declaration? If it had been Chu Xiaofeng who said it, it wouldn't have been a problem. But if it had been him, she wasn't even considered one of his people, right? Forget it, she couldn't ask too much of him. It was fine as long as he didn't call her master. She could be considered to have muddled her way through. After all, he was standing in front of her and the others. This included Chu Xiaofeng. She should be considered one of his people, right? In that case, he could also be considered a blockhead. With that in mind, Luo Qingtong quickly glanced at Yi Qianxian. The latter's face was hidden behind the white jade mask, making him look unfathomable. On the other side, when Chu Yuqing and the others saw Chu Lingfeng appear, their faces were filled with indescribable shock. You idiot, why are you here? Chu Yuqing was so shocked that he forgot to hide it. He directly called out the word idiot. As for Chu Ku'er and the others, they looked to Chu Lingfeng with astonishment in their eyes. It was as if they had seen a ghost. Wasn't Chu Lingfeng killed by Chu Yuqing? Not only that, but he was also heavily injured. If Luo Qingtong hadn't suddenly appeared to save him, he would have died at Chu Yuqing's hands. Why was it that his current situation was completely different from what Chu Yuqing and the others had described? How did Chu Lingfeng look like he was heavily injured? When he'd sent that guard flying, how did he look like he'd used up all his blood? Not only that, but when everyone saw the aura of power rippling from Chu Lingfeng's body, their eyes widened. You. They looked at Chu Lingfeng in shock. They discovered that he'd actually advanced to the human martial realm. He was the first person in this generation of the Tianfeng Chu family to advance to the human martial realm. Chapter 26-23. Everyone was shocked, but Chu Lingfeng didn't feel anything. He'd long since reached the peak of the 9th level of the Amethyst Elder, and was only one step away from breaking through to the human martial realm. Of course, many people would take a long time to take this step, but Chu Lingfeng had been ambushed this time, and his bloodline power had been completely exhausted. He'd then recovered, reaching the level of destruction before establishment. In addition, Luo Qingtong had broken the contract with Snowball, allowing him to form a contract with Snowball. Under the stimulation of these two factors, Chu Lingfeng had broken through the 9th level of the Amethyst Elder and reached the human martial realm. It was precisely because he needed to break through that Chu Lingfeng hadn't appeared in the heart of the continent in time. Otherwise, How would that trash Chu Yuqing have had the chance to bully his master? As Chu Lingfeng thought this, the scene of Chu Yuqing and the others trying to make a move on Luo Qingtong flashed through his mind. Immediately, a wave of ruthlessness surged in his heart, and he grinned maliciously at them. What? Are you unhappy that I didn't die? Don't worry, you'll be even more unhappy later. And cry even more miserably. Chu Lingfeng's expression was cold and ruthless. At this moment, he didn't look the least bit foolish. In fact, Chu Lingfeng would immediately become like a ferocious beast when it came to matters of battle. His entire person would become incomparably cold and ruthless. At that time, he looked just like a ferocious beast in human form. He was born for battle. If not for his straightforward and honest nature, Chu Yuqing and the others wouldn't have dared to oppose Chu Lingfeng in this state, let alone try to ambush and kill him. Chu Lingfeng, who'd entered battle mode, didn't show the slightest bit of foolishness. Even Chu Yuqing and the others, after scheming against Chu Lingfeng, were only able to kill him by surrounding and killing him. They couldn't use any other method, because Chu Lingfeng's strength wasn't something that ordinary people could compare to, and in battle mode, he wasn't so easy to deceive. His battle instincts were better than anyone else's. When he saw Chu Lingfeng like this, Chu Yuqing's face instantly turned deathly pale. He couldn't help but take a step back. It was the same for the people behind him, especially the Tianfeng Chu clan's disciples who followed behind him, and the other top disciples. They were on the verge of tears under Chu Lingfeng's gaze. Everyone knew that although this new young master was simple and honest, his reverse scale was not to be touched. In the past, when he had just arrived at Tianfeng Chu's home, there were people who bullied him because of his straightforward nature. They openly slandered Yin Yang in front of him, and called his mother a slut. She thought that with Chu Lingfeng's simple and honest personality, he wouldn't do anything even if he heard it. Who would have thought that Chu Lingfeng would go berserk and tear apart the Tianfeng Chu clan's disciple with bloodshot eyes? Since then, everyone knew how terrifying Chu Lingfeng was. They knew that they couldn't touch his reverse scale in front of him. Chu Lingfeng was a tyrannical person. He protected his food and all resources. Once he set his mind on something or someone, no matter what others said, he wouldn't change his mind. If someone dared to make a move against him, he didn't know what it meant to hold back. He'd directly beat the other party half to death. Unless they used resources to trade with him, it was possible that he'd beat them to death. Even the family head and the elders couldn't do anything to him. Many of the top disciples present had already suffered at his hands, not to mention Chu Yuqing and the others. They were the first to find trouble with Chu Lingfeng. In the end, they were also the ones who'd been beaten to a pulp. Chapter 26-24. Needless to say, the guards behind them were even more shocked. They looked at Chu Lingfeng's figure with shock and fear. Their faces were filled with indescribable terror. The young master of the Tianfeng Chu family hadn't died. He didn't even seem to have suffered any serious injuries, nor did he seem to have exhausted his bloodline power. Not only that, but his strength had also increased. He had become the first person of the Tianfeng Chu family's generation to reach the human martial arts realm. He was truly the first person. They had participated in Chu Yuqing's plan. They had been ordered by him to kill Chu Lingfeng. What would happen to them now? Everyone's teeth chattered as they wondered this. Chu Lingfeng didn't even bother to pay attention to them. After he finished speaking, he immediately turned around and looked at Luo Qingtong. Mas, Luo Qingtong, are you all right? Chu Lingfeng's voice was very loud. The word mas was twisted so stiffly that it almost jumped out of his mouth. Fortunately, he remembered Luo Qingtong's instructions in time and swallowed it back down. He changed it to Luo Qingtong's alias. Luo Qingtong's lips twitched. Although she knew that she couldn't expect too much from him, she still couldn't help but cover her face. Oh my god, this idiot. You should have asked Chu Xiaofeng first. However, Luo Qingtong also knew that it was asking too much for Chu Lingfeng to put others before his concern for her. Didn't he see that Chu Lingfeng had been staring at her from the moment he appeared? He didn't even look at Chu Xiaofeng and the others. If she made him act too much, it would be too out of character. That wouldn't be good. It was better to be like this now. With that thought in mind, Luo Qingtong could only smooth things over. "I'm fine. Thank you for your concern, young master." As she said this, she immediately explained to Chu Lingfeng and the others, "I saved young Master Chu's life before and healed his injuries." Luo Qingtong's words made Gu Yifeng and the others, who were stunned by Chu Lingfeng's unusual actions, feel relieved. "So that's how it is. I was wondering how little Seven knew the young master." Chu Xiaofeng was also very surprised, but at this moment, he had already relaxed. Chu Lingfeng's previous words were very clear. It was very clear that Chu Yuqing and the others had already made a move against Chu Lingfeng. This should be the reason why Luo Shaoqi saved Chu Lingfeng's life and healed his injuries. However, when he thought that Luo Qingtong had saved Chu Lingfeng's life, he was referring to the fact that Luo Qingtong had encountered the seriously injured Chu Lingfeng, saved him, and healed his injuries. What he didn't know was that Luo Qingtong had single-handedly charged into the encirclement of Chu Yuqing and the others, and forcibly rescued Chu Lingfeng from a hopeless situation. Even if they were beaten to death, they would never have imagined that Luo Qingtong would be able to do such a thing, and even succeed. Everyone's expressions suddenly became clear. Even Chu Qiankong and the others thought so. Only Chu Yuqing and the others knew what was going on. They looked at Luo Qingtong and gritted their teeth. If it weren't for this youth, they wouldn't have fallen into such a situation. On the other hand, Yi Qianren faintly raised her eyebrows. Was this woman deliberately saying this for him to hear? In order to continue hiding her identity, she's really going all out. She's drawing a clear line between herself and Chu Lingfeng. Yi Qianxian's lips curled slightly, but he didn't say anything. His deep and solemn eyes didn't reveal the slightest bit of emotion or fluctuation. Luo Qingtong looked at him and immediately breathed a sigh of relief. This should be a cover-up, right? Chapter 26-25. Leave her to me. He stretched out his hand towards Yi Qianxian. His eyes, which were red because of his wildness, stared straight at Yi Qianxian. "I will protect her." When Chu Lingfeng said this, Luo Qingtong almost bit her own tongue. She had never thought that Chu Lingfeng would do something like this. The corners of her lips twitched as she watched Chu Lingfeng stare at Yi Qianxian. She suddenly felt a headache coming on. In this situation, from other people's point of view, staying by Chu Lingfeng's side was indeed the best choice. But only Luo Qingtong knew that staying by Yi Qianxian's side was the best choice. But this was not the main point. The main point was that Chu Lingfeng's words were too ambiguous and ambiguous. Those who knew, such as Luo Qingtong, knew that he really wanted to protect her. But in other people's ears, Luo Qingtong's lips twitched violently. "That there's no need, young Master Chu." Before Luo Qingtong could finish her sentence, Chu Lingfeng's voice suddenly rose. "Of course. You just stay by my side." When Chu Lingfeng said this, Luo Qingtong's lips twitched even more. This guy even knew how to interrupt. Who taught him that? But why was he so insistent on getting her to his side? Was he worried about her safety? As Luo Qingtong was thinking about this, she heard Yi Qianxian's cold voice. "There's no need. I took her protection fee, so I will naturally protect her. There's no need for young Master Chu to worry." As Yi Qianxian spoke, he tightened his grip on Luo Qingtong's waist. As it turned out, when Chu Yuqing and the others were about to attack them, he had already taken Luo Qingtong into his arms. If Chu Lingfeng had come just a little later, Chu Yuqing and the others would have already died without a burial site. However, it was also good that Chu Lingfeng was here. It saved them the trouble of making a move. However, Yi Qianxian didn't expect that Luo Qingtong's right-hand man would snatch her away from him as soon as he arrived. Why did she have to stay by his side as long as he protected her? Yi Qianxian sneered. His woman should naturally stay by his side. Therefore, Yi Qianxian showed no signs of letting him go. Not only that, he also used Luo Qingtong's protection fee as an excuse to block Chu Lingfeng. After all, he had taken someone's money and had to take care of their problems. There was naturally a reason why he was so protective of Luo Xiaoqi. Otherwise, how could he explain his actions? Yi Qianxian wasn't ready to let Luo Qingtong know that he had seen through her identity. The two of them faced off just like that. Yi Qianxian's voice was cold. The moment he opened his mouth, Beiqing, Fengyu, and the others spontaneously stood behind him. Behind Chu Lingfeng, a group of people from the Tianfeng Chu clan had also gathered. These people had all just arrived. They were from the Tianfeng Chu clan. Among them was the 8th elder's top disciple, Chu Jingyi. Seeing the confrontation in front of him, Chu Jingyi was at a complete loss. He looked at Chu Xiaofeng beside him and asked, "What's going on? Why are they confronting each other?" Chu Jingyi had just arrived, but he had already learned what had happened from the people around him. Naturally, he knew that Yi Qianxian was on Chu Lingfeng's side. But why were they confronting each other now? And Luo Xiaoqi was also involved in it? Chu Jingyi looked at Luo Qingtong being held by Chu Lingfeng, while Yi Qianxian was holding her waist. Suddenly, an idea popped into his mind. Chapter 26:26. Chu Jingyi's lips inexplicably twitched as he thought of this. This must be my misconception, right? However, just as he was thinking this, he heard Chu Yuqing's mocking voice ring out at this moment. "So that's how it is. Chu Lingfeng. So that's how you feel about this Luo Xiaoqi." No wonder he called Luo Xiaoqi master before. So he and Luo Xiaoqi had this kind of relationship. Chu Lingfeng, that idiot, was actually gay. Not only that, the one who broke was a fickle man. Chu Yuqing looked with disdain at Chu Lingfeng and Yi Qianxian, who were holding on to Luo Qingtong. He no longer had any doubts as to why Luo Qingtong had suddenly run over to save Chu Lingfeng. He even automatically replaced the master that Luo Qingtong had called out when she came to save Chu Lingfeng. It must be known that these two words, to a certain extent, had the same meaning. But in another situation, the meaning of the word master could be interpreted in a much more complex way. Chu Yuqing had already regarded Luo Qingtong as Chu Lingfeng's boy toy. But now, it seemed that Chu Lingfeng, that idiot, had not only taken a fancy to a man, but had even thrown away his status as the young master of the Tianfeng Chu family for that man. He had actually called the other party master. What a disgrace to the Tianfeng Chu family. It had to be said that if this had been done by any other member of the Tianfeng Chu family, Chu Yuqing wouldn't have made such a connection. But who told this person to be Chu Lingfeng? When he thought of the other party's idiotic and gullible personality, Chu Yuqing didn't doubt his own thoughts at all. It turned out that Luo Xiaoqi and Chu Lingfeng had such a relationship. No wonder Luo Xiaoqi suddenly came to save Chu Lingfeng, and the latter's attitude towards her was also so tight. Chu Yuqing had previously suspected the identities of Chu Lingfeng and Luo Qingtong. However, the way Chu Lingfeng addressed him as master was too inconceivable. Even though Chu Yuqing suspected that Chu Lingfeng had truly recognized Luo Qingtong as his master, when he thought of Luo Qingtong's strength, which hadn't even reached the venerable realm, and that she was a youth, he began to wonder if his suspicions were correct. When he saw Chu Lingfeng and Yi Qianxian fighting over Luo Qingtong, he suddenly realized that he had guessed the relationship between Luo Qingtong and Chu Lingfeng. When Luo Qingtong heard his realization, she felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Such a powerful imagination actually left her speechless. If she didn't have Sherlock Holmes's life, could she not have contracted his illness? The truth was simply worlds apart from his conjecture. Luo Qingtong was speechless, but she also rejoiced at Chu Yuqing's imagination. At the very least, being misunderstood by others as having a homosexual relationship with Chu Lingfeng was better than being recognized by Yi Qianxian, right? She didn't know why Chu Lingfeng, that blockhead, was so insistent on her going over to his side. But Chu Yuqing's explanation was better than having Luo Qingtong's identity exposed by Yi Qianxian. Chu Lingfeng's eyes were cold, and he completely ignored Chu Yuqing. His pair of beastly red eyes stared fixedly at Yi Qianxian and said, "Let go. My master isn't someone you can touch." Just as he was about to speak, he remembered Luo Qingtong's previous instructions. He immediately swallowed the rest of his words and changed them to Chapter 26:27. Oh my God! Luo Qingtong covered her face with her hands. She really couldn't bear to watch. Fortunately, Chu Yuqing had already found an excellent excuse for her. Otherwise, with Chu Lingfeng's provocative actions, her identity would definitely be exposed. Was this guy here specifically to subdue her? She had told him not to call her master in front of outsiders. He hadn't called her that. But this intimate gesture, this ambiguous way of speaking, what was the difference between that and calling her master? It was simply a pain in the ass. Luo Qingtong felt that she had really been miserably tricked by Chu Lingfeng, this big blockhead. She didn't know whether to call this guy obedient or loyal, whether it was letting her go over to his side, or letting Yi Qianxian let go. Chu Lingfeng was doing it for her own good. Luo Qingtong's lips twitched. She couldn't blame Chu Lingfeng. When Yi Qianxian heard Chu Lingfeng's words, he immediately laughed. Behind his white jade mask, a brilliant light shone in all directions. That extremely handsome face was now full of smiles. But it was because of anger. Your people. Yi Qianxian sneered at Chu Lingfeng. If he didn't know that this big blockhead was Luo Qingtong's person, and that his loyalty to her was unquestionable, without the slightest bit of impurity, he would have already killed him. Just based on Chu Lingfeng's words alone, he would have made him bleed on the spot. When had his woman become someone else's person? Did this woman make him say this? Yi Qianxian's eyes looked dangerously at Luo Qingtong. The corners of the latter's lips twitched. Seeing that Chu Lingfeng and Yi Qianxian were getting more and more hostile, and that a fight might break out in the next moment, she hurriedly said to Yi Qianxian, "Cough, brother, I'm sorry. I'll go over first to inform young Master Chu." After saying this, she explained to Yi Qianxian in a low voice, "You should be able to see that young Master Chu's temperament is different from that of ordinary people. He wants me to go over now, probably to repay me for saving his life. He wants to protect me well. Brother, you shouldn't argue with him, so as to avoid delaying the fight for the heavenly grass." Luo Qingtong's words were very reasonable. She even explained Chu Lingfeng's excessive closeness and protectiveness to her perfectly. This cunning woman. Yi Qianxian snorted coldly. Although he didn't want to let go of Luo Qingtong, he didn't want to expose Luo Qingtong. However, he wasn't prepared to expose Luo Qingtong's identity yet, so he had no reason to keep her here. After all, although he considered himself as Luo Qingtong's protector, Luo Qingtong had requested to go over to Chu Lingfeng's side. He couldn't stop her. Thinking of this, he immediately let go of Luo Qingtong's waist. Chu Lingfeng's eyes were bloodshot. He couldn't control the bestial nature in his body, and wanted to make a move. Or was it because Luo Qingtong was by Yi Qianxian's side? He was afraid of hurting Luo Qingtong, so he deliberately suppressed the violence in his body. Otherwise, according to his reckless temper, he would definitely beat her up first. Let's not talk about anything else. Let's snatch Master first. The man in front of her was too rude. He actually dared to make a move on her master. He even hugged Master's waist. How could this be? Even if Master was a man, it still wasn't allowed. Chu Lingfeng pulled Luo Qingtong to his side. He looked at Yi Qianxian with a face full of vigilance and hostility. It was as if he had done something unpardonable. Luo Qingtong found it funny. She lowered her voice and asked, "What's the matter? Do you have a grudge against him? Otherwise, why would he insist on taking her over?" Chapter 26-28. Luo Qingtong knew that Chu Lingfeng didn't know about Yi Qianxian's current identity. In order to prevent him from exposing himself, Luo Qingtong didn't tell him. "Mas, Shaoqi, don't go near him." Chu Lingfeng looked at Luo Qingtong gloomily and said, "The person who likes you won't be happy. Don't abandon me after having sex with me." Chu Lingfeng the blockhead wanted to say, "Ming Zun won't be happy. Master, don't abandon me after having sex with me." But there were so many people around, and Luo Qingtong didn't allow him to reveal her identity. After thinking for a while, he forced himself to say this. However, he didn't expect that his words, coupled with his declaration to Yi Qianxian, would be so ambiguous. At this moment, even if Chu Lingfeng told everyone that he didn't have any feelings for Luo Qingtong, no one would believe him. The expressions of the Tianfeng Chu clan members were very interesting. As for Gu Yifeng and the other mercenaries, they were all dumbfounded. Damn! The young master of the Tianfeng Chu clan really did have such feelings for Luo Shaoqi. Everyone had originally thought that Chu Yuqing was spouting nonsense. But Chu Lingfeng's words proved that he was telling the truth. Chu Lingfeng's feelings for Luo Shaoqi were really impure. As for Chu Jingyi and Chu Xiaofeng, they were even more shocked. Wait a minute, the young master is a homosexual. The corners of Chu Jingyi's lips twitched. He didn't know what to say. Chu Lingfeng was the only direct descendant of the Tianfeng Chu clan. If he was a homosexual, the elders of the clan would probably explode. Even the head of the clan wouldn't ignore it. Chu Xiaofeng stared at Luo Qingtong, and Chu Lingfeng in bewilderment. Oh my god, this is too explosive. How could Luo Shaoqi and young master have such a relationship? While everyone was shocked and dumbfounded, Luo Qingtong was so shocked by Chu Lingfeng's words that she slipped and almost fell to the ground. Is that why you purposely brought me to your side? She was wondering why Chu Lingfeng, this big blockhead, looked like he was going all out with Yi Qianxian. It was impossible for the two of them to know each other. Chu Lingfeng didn't know Yi Qianxian's identity either. After Luo Qingtong figured out the meaning of Chu Lingfeng's words, she suddenly didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Her lips twitched, and she didn't know what to say to Chu Lingfeng. Did this blockhead know that the white jade-masked man he was talking about was Yi Qianxian? He even told her not to get too close to him. Luo Qingtong's heart was angry and funny for a while. When Chu Lingfeng heard her words, he thought she was blaming him. He suddenly felt more depressed in his heart. He knew that he should listen to his master. Whoever his master wanted to be with had nothing to do with him. But since he was with Luo Qingtong, he knew that Luo Qingtong and Yi Qianxian were a couple. Ming Zun was so good to his master. He was powerful, strong, and handsome. In Chu Lingfeng's mind, only Ming Zun was so good to Luo Qingtong. Ming Zun was always the first to arrive when Luo Qingtong was in danger. Ming Zun was the only one who cared about Luo Qingtong in every way possible. He was more concerned about her than the people who followed her through life and death. He was the one they recognized as the one who was qualified to stand beside Luo Qingtong. Chu Lingfeng regarded Luo Qingtong as a belief and a god. In his mind, no one was more powerful than Luo Qingtong. Chapter 26-29. But Ming Zun was different. He was sincerely good to master, and put master in his heart. Chu Lingfeng and the others only admitted that he was by Luo Qingtong's side. Seeing that Luo Qingtong blamed him for this, his heart suddenly felt very sad. Chu Lingfeng was not good with words and didn't know what to say. He was afraid that if he said too much he would annoy master. But he also didn't want Luo Qingtong to abandon Yi Qianxian and choose someone else. No one was more suitable for master than Ming Zun. He had to protect master for Ming Zun, so that master wouldn't be deceived by someone with ulterior motives. Thinking of this, he immediately glared at Yi Qianxian, and then shouted at Luo Qingtong. I don't care. Anyway, I won't let you be with someone else. Pfft. Hearing his words, Luo Qingtong almost spat out her saliva. Damn. Chu Lingfeng, you big fool. Do you know what you are saying now? What do you mean you won't let me be with someone else? What's with this overbearing CEO's declaration? Luo Qingtong's eyes twitched fiercely, and she didn't dare to look at Yi Qianxian's direction. Chu Lingfeng, this guy, was King naturally evil. From the moment he appeared, every word and sentence was like digging a hole for her to die. This guy wasn't actually her subordinate, but her enemy. Luo Qingtong was about to shed tears of sadness for herself. While her heart was tangled, on the other side, Yi Qianxian looked at her, and Chu Lingfeng with an unfathomable gaze. Naturally, he had heard the conversation between the two of them. Chu Lingfeng said that, the person who likes you will not be happy, and asked Luo Qingtong not to abandon him. Yi Qianxian guessed that that person should be referring to himself. After all, he knew Luo Qingtong's identity. Other than him, no one else could be worthy of Luo Qingtong's words of abandoning him. He didn't expect Chu Lingfeng, this big fool, to be so protective of him. Yi Qianxian's expression was indifferent. He didn't take the matter of Chu Lingfeng snatching Luo Qingtong away from his side so seriously. On the contrary, Luo Qingtong's expression at this moment made him feel very satisfied. This woman is used to acting. All day long, She's tricking left and right. She probably didn't expect to be tricked so miserably by her own people, right? Yi Qianxian coldly snorted in his heart. He made up his mind to pretend that he didn't know anything. He was determined not to expose Luo Qingtong's identity. Let her be tangled up like this. Let's see how she explains it to me in the future. Yi Qianxian's heart was satisfied, but his expression was indescribably leisurely and contented. Luo Qingtong didn't know that she had been seen through long ago. She was thinking about how to smooth things over with Chu Lingfeng's words. Their thoughts were different. On the other side, Chu Yuqing's heart was filled with indescribable pride. Sure enough, it was as he thought. This Chu Lingfeng had taken a fancy to Luo Shaoqi. Ha! A fool learning how to talk about love like other people. In the end, he would only be fooled by others. But although Chu Lingfeng was a fool, the people of the Tianfeng Chu family weren't fools, right? As Chu Yuqing thought this, a sinister smile appeared on his face. He had just been thinking about how to extricate himself from this matter. After all, if Chu Lingfeng didn't die, then the unlucky one would be him. All the plans he'd made before were now useless. Chapter 2630. Otherwise, even if they managed to kill Chu Lingfeng, they would still die. But this was different. Didn't they have Luo Shaoqi as their weakness? Luo Shaoqi had seduced the young master of the Tianfeng Chu clan, seducing him into depravity and disregarding the dignity of the Tianfeng Chu clan. As the Tianfeng Chu clan's disciples, they couldn't just sit by and watch, could they? They had to eliminate this femme fatale Luo Shaoqi. Of course, if Chu Lingfeng tried to stop them and was accidentally killed by them, it would be an accident, wouldn't it? Chu Lingfeng was extremely pleased with himself as he thought of this. He really was a genius for coming up with such an idea. In this way, not only could he perfectly get rid of Chu Lingfeng, this huge hidden danger, but he could also make Luo Shaoqi, the person who had ruined his plans, die without a burial. Humph, if it weren't for her, he would have already killed Chu Lingfeng. Now it was just an eye for an eye. Chu Yuqing suddenly jumped out and shouted, "No, our Tianfeng Chu clan's young master can't fall in love with a man. Chu Lingfeng, this isn't just about you. It's about the entire Tianfeng Chu clan. We have the responsibility to prevent you from being seduced by other people with ulterior motives. Luo Shaoqi, you attacked our Tianfeng Chu clan's people before. And now you're seducing our Tianfeng Chu clan's young master to fall head over heels for you. I suspect that you were sent by other clans to deal with our Tianfeng Chu clan. Everyone, we can't let our young master do as he pleases. This Luo Shaoqi must be eliminated." As soon as Chu Yuqing's words came out, the surrounding Tianfeng Chu clan's disciples instantly understood. Chu Yuqing wanted to use the excuse of eliminating Luo Shaoqi to deal with Chu Lingfeng. This was especially true for Chu Hanyu and the others. When Chu Lingfeng had appeared, they had begun to distance themselves from Chu Yuqing and the others. After all, Chu Lingfeng hadn't died, and had even appeared in front of everyone. This meant that Chu Yuqing had already lost the initiative. His opponent was doomed, and they couldn't get involved with him. But when they heard Chu Yuqing's words, their faces froze. Then, their eyes began to shine brightly. That's right. He wanted to kill Luo Shaoqi to deal with Chu Lingfeng. At that time, if Chu Lingfeng tried to stop them, they would say that it was an accident, that they accidentally killed Chu Lingfeng to protect the dignity of the Tianfeng Chu family. It was Chu Lingfeng who was willing to die for Luo Shaoqi. He was a romantic. What did that have to do with people like them? In this way, they would be able to kill Chu Lingfeng openly. Everyone's breathing quickened. What kind of person would collude with Chu Yuqing? Naturally, it would be someone who was ambitious and covetously eyeing Chu Lingfeng's position as young master. Someone who wanted to kill him. Normally, these people wouldn't have dared to make a move against Chu Lingfeng. But now that they had a good reason to do so, they couldn't help but be moved. This was too rare. This opportunity was too hard to come by. Furthermore, it would allow them to go all out in the open without any reservations. Their hearts immediately started thumping violently. Unknowingly, they had gathered around Chu Yuqing from all directions. Chapter 2631. Kill Chu Lingfeng? This way, no matter who became the head of the family, the elder council under their control would not be weakened. After all, in this generation, Chu Tianyi held absolute power. In the Tianfeng Chu family, his words were absolute, and the elder council's power was weakened to the extreme. They didn't want to see themselves being oppressed by Chu Lingfeng like their parents when they were in charge of the elder hall. The other party had inherited Chu Tianyi's bloodline and was extremely terrifying. If they could strangle him here, everyone's hearts were stirred. They would not take the initiative to attack Chu Lingfeng, but if there was a chance to kill Chu Lingfeng, they would definitely not refuse. The eyes of the Tianfeng Chu family members flashed, but the faces of Chu Lingfeng, Chu Jingyi, and the others suddenly became solemn. Not good. Chu Yuqing has designs on the young master. Chu Jingyi's eyes were cold as he swept his gaze over the faces of the Tianfeng Chu family members. His heart immediately sank. He hadn't expected Chu Yuqing to find such an excuse to make trouble. This was troublesome. However, Chu Jingyi also knew that after Chu Yuqing failed to kill Chu Lingfeng, he would not rest until the latter was dead. Even if Chu Yuqing did not use Luo Shaoqi as an excuse, he would find other ways to make trouble. This had nothing to do with Luo Shaoqi. She just happened to give Chu Yuqing a reason. The real fuse was that Chu Yuqing wanted to kill Chu Lingfeng. He would not let Chu Lingfeng leave the abandoned continent alive. Otherwise, the one who would die in the end would be him. Chu Jingyi thought so, but he did not blame Luo Qingtong. Instead, he coldly said to Chu Xiaofeng and the others, "Protect the young master well. Chu Yuqing, aren't you meddling too much? What does it have to do with you who the young master likes? Even if the family doesn't allow it, the elders will naturally make a decision after we leave the abandoned continent. It's not your place to meddle." Humph. Chu Yuqing sneered at them. The eighth elder's people were the patriarch's sworn supporters. There was no need for him to be courteous to them. In any case, they would definitely stand on Chu Lingfeng's side. At that time, he would kill them all. As Chu Yuqing thought this, his expression darkened, and he smiled proudly. "Chu Jingyi, what are you saying? Us top disciples have been nurtured by our families. Naturally, we have to share the burden of our families. He's just a small mercenary. Just kill him. Why do we have to alarm the elders and have them make a move? There's no need to bother them." As Chu Yuqing spoke, he chuckled darkly. "Instead, it's you who are so protective of her. Could it be that you were the ones who instigated this? Did you introduce such a troublemaker to the young lord?" When he said this, his face suddenly turned solemn, and he shouted sternly, "I think you all have bad intentions. After we kill Luo Shaoqi, we'll hold you accountable. If you dare to stop us, we'll treat you as her accomplice and deal with you together." Chu Yuqing's words had already revealed his ferocious side. His ambition and killing intent were as clear as day. "Attack, surround them. Young lord, please forgive us." Chapter 2632. Chu Yuqing said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He was already prepared to make his move. Behind him, Chu Hanyu and the others all stepped forward. These people had all agreed to help Chu Yuqing find Chu Lingfeng and kill him. Now that they'd gotten such a good opportunity, and had a legitimate reason to attack, how could they endure? Immediately, he joined Chu Yuqing and the others in surrounding Chu Lingfeng, Chu Xiaofeng, Chu Jingyi and the others. Luo Qingtong had a lot of mercenaries on her side, but compared to the elite disciples' guards, they weren't enough. Although Chu Qiankong and Chu Yuanhong hadn't made a move, their people had spread out far and wide, surrounding them in all directions. It was obvious that they didn't want to give Chu Lingfeng and Luo Qingtong any chance to escape. Even if Luo Qingtong and the others managed to break through Chu Yuqing's encirclement, they still had them. At the critical moment, as long as they obstructed Luo Qingtong and Chu Lingfeng's escape route, Chu Yuqing and the others would immediately catch up to them and completely surround them. This scene looked like a hopeless situation. The situation had changed so quickly that before the mercenaries behind Luo Qingtong could react, they were already completely surrounded. They hadn't expected the situation to change so quickly. By the time they reacted, they could only tighten their grip on their weapons and stick close to Luo Qingtong and the others. Little seventh young master. Everyone's hearts were filled with nervousness and worry. Luo Qingtong's eyes narrowed slightly. She didn't have time to think about how to explain things to Yi Qianxian. Instead, she looked at Chu Yuqing's people, who were taking the opportunity to make things difficult for her. The latter wasn't stupid. They knew that they were taking advantage of this opportunity to make things difficult for Chu Lingfeng. Luo Qingtong knew that although the relationship between her and Chu Lingfeng wasn't the kind of relationship that Chu Yuqing and the others thought it was. However, she was indeed Chu Lingfeng's weakness. Chu Yuqing and the others had stumbled upon a way to deal with Chu Lingfeng. But so what? They dared to use her as a raft to deal with Chu Lingfeng. Were they not afraid of spraining their feet? Luo Qingtong's face was cold. She looked at Chu Yuqing and the others, her eyes completely devoid of emotion. She hated it when others used her. This point was only second to being betrayed. Chu Yuqing wanted to use her as a stepping stone, so he shouldn't blame her for breaking his foot. As for Bei Qing, Feng Yu and the others, they were prepared to intervene the moment Chu Yuqing and the others attacked. However, they were stopped by Yi Qianxian. No need. His voice was indifferent, deep and cold. He looked in Luo Qingtong's direction. Just by looking at this woman's current attitude, he knew that she had a way. There was no need for him to intervene. Yi Qianxian was happy to let Luo Qingtong resolve this herself. He liked to see this woman's radiant appearance very much, although he was always gloomy about this person's craftiness and fickleness, and how she didn't like to rely on him. Yi Qianxian knew that it was precisely this type of Luo Qingtong that deeply attracted him. Whether she was crafty and fickle-minded, eccentric, arrogant, domineering, or insufferably arrogant, he liked it all. Moreover, he was happy to discover more different sides of her. Yi Qianxian's words stunned Bei Qing, Feng Yu and the others. Master. They looked at Yi Qianxian. They didn't know if the latter was angry at Luo Qingtong and wanted to make her suffer before making a move. But there was nothing between the demonic physician and Chu Lingfeng. They could all tell that their master couldn't have been so blinded by the situation that he didn't notice anything, right? As Feng Yu thought this, she immediately opened her mouth to mediate. Chapter 2633. Calamity. Luo Qingtong chuckled as she looked in Chu Yuqing's direction. Young Master Yuqing has already pinned such a big label on me. If I don't do something, it really seems like I'll be living up to this reputation of being a calamity. What a loss. Luo Qingtong's expression was indifferent. Her smile, which was covered by her birthmark, revealed 3 parts malevolence and 7 parts devilish charm. Speaking of which, it was strange. Luo Qingtong's appearance was so ugly that no one would be able to look directly at her. But in front of everyone, her ugly face covered with birthmarks was always overlooked. Not only that, but when she smiled, her 3 parts malevolent and 7 parts ugly appearance gave people an indescribable feeling of breathtaking grace. But Luo Qingtong's appearance was clearly extremely ugly. No one knew where this breathtaking feeling came from, but it just so happened that they had such a feeling. When Luo Qingtong's words came out, Chu Yuqing immediately sneered. In his opinion, Luo Qingtong was struggling on her deathbed. Just based on the fact that he had something on Chu Lingfeng, he could easily kill Luo Qingtong. Not only that, but even Chu Lingfeng wouldn't be able to escape this fate. Luo Qingtong had previously rescued Chu Lingfeng from his encirclement. But this time, almost all the members of the Chu clan were on his side. How could her people be compared to the guards of the Chu clan of Heavenly Wind? Chu Lingfeng's side only had Chu Jingyi, Chu Xiaofeng and 8th Elder's people. Apart from them, there were no other reinforcements. What else could Luo Qingtong do? Solidify her reputation as a calamity? If she died, then her reputation as a calamity would be solidified. Not only that, but she would also implicate Chu Lingfeng and drag him down with her. As Chu Yuqing thought this, he suddenly felt an indescribable sense of victory. He looked at Luo Qingtong and sneered. It seems that you know your crime very well. Then we won't be polite. If you want to stall for more time and talk nonsense, then let me tell you, don't waste your time. Because we are loyal to our families and the protection of our families. In order to persuade the young lord not to do anything stupid, We will spare no effort. That's right. Chu Yuqing's words were a warning to Luo Qingtong not to try any more tricks. Among the Tianfeng Chu clan members present, other than the 8th elder who was absolutely loyal to the clan head, the rest of them couldn't wait for Chu Lingfeng to die. Previously he didn't have a reason, but now, he had provided these people with an open and honorable reason to not be afraid of being punished. Under these circumstances, it didn't matter how much scheming and eloquence Luo Qingtong had. Even if she could turn a dead person into a living one, it wouldn't be of any use. Compared to the benefits of killing Chu Lingfeng, even something as important as obtaining the Tianluo grass couldn't compare. Otherwise, how could these people ignore the fact that the heart of the continent was about to open after hearing his words? Luo Qingtong and Chu Lingfeng were dead meat. No one on this abandoned continent could save them. However, as soon as Chu Yuqing spoke, Luo Qingtong's words were mixed with a bit of ridicule, coldness, and contempt. Is that so? Then young Master Yuqing, you'd better watch carefully. Watch how this calamity overturns the heavens and earth, and overturns the rain with a flip of my hand. Chapter 26-34. The latter and the others were watching the internal strife of the Tianfeng Chu family. They even stood far away, so that it would be easier for the people of the Tianfeng Chu family to take action. Are you sure you want to just stand by and watch? Luo Qingtong put on a faint smile. Together with the huge birthmark on her face, her devilish temperament was revealed again. Her eyes were fixed on the man in the front, who was surrounded by the top disciples of the Lien family of the Flying Star clan. Compared with the chaos of the Tianfeng Chu family, the people of the Lien family of the Flying Star clan were much more orderly. All the disciples of the Lien family of the Flying Star clan, who had hurried over, were following the man on their own accord. Those who were dressed like top disciples were clustered around him, while the others were scattered in the surroundings. They were arranged in order according to their cultivation and status. There was no noise or chaos at all. It was not hard to imagine how prestigious the man was in the Lien family of the Flying Star clan. At this moment, hearing Luo Qingtong's words, all the people of the Lien family of the Flying Star clan raised their heads and looked at Luo Qingtong. The man was no exception. Are you talking to me? His thin lips parted slightly. There was a hint of surprise in his eyes when he looked at Luo Qingtong. He probably didn't expect that Luo Qingtong would speak to the people of the Lien family of the Flying Star clan at this moment. Yes, Luo Qingtong's expression was indifferent, and she looked indescribably calm. She looked at the man with a smile and said, "Of course, if there is another person here who can be the master of the Lien family of the Flying Star clan, you can take it that I'm not talking to you." Hearing that, Lien Xingchen narrowed his eyes immediately. He looked at Luo Qingtong and observed her carefully. Then he chuckled. "Then, what do you want to talk to me about? Or rather, what do you want me to do for you?" Lien Xingchen's words were full of interest. Not because of anything else, but because Luo Qingtong was really different from the rest. At this time, the Tianfeng Chu family wanted to kill her, and even used this opportunity to attack the young master of the Chu family. She actually spoke to him. Not only that, she seemed to be asking for help from the Lien family of the Flying Star sector. This was interesting. The Lien clan of the Flying Star planet was on the opposite side of the Tianfeng Chu clan, at least for now. Both from his perspective, and from the perspective of the entire Lien family of the Flying Star sector. They all hoped that the Tianfeng Chu family would have internal strife. It would be best if the fight was as intense as possible. In that case, the Lien family of the Flying Star sector would naturally win the competition for the heavenly Luo grass. Under such circumstances, Luo Qingtong actually asked them for help. Didn't she know that they couldn't possibly help her? Before Luo Qingtong could reply to Lien Xingchen, Chu Yuqing had already burst into laughter. "Haha, Luo Xiaoqi, I think you've lost your mind. You actually asked for help from the Lien family of the Flying Star sector? Why would they interfere with the affairs of the Tianfeng Chu clan? That will only bring trouble to themselves. Moreover, the competition for the heavenly Luo grass was imminent. The Tianfeng Chu clan was only doing this because they knew that killing Chu Lingfeng would bring them great benefits. Why would the Lien family of the Flying Star sector give up this great opportunity to help Chu Lingfeng while the Tianfeng Chu clan was fighting among themselves? Chapter 2635. Qi. Hearing Chu Yuqing's words, the other members of the Tianfeng Chu clan around him also showed faint expressions of mockery. Their gazes towards Luo Qingtong were full of scorn and disdain. Seeing this scene, Chu Kuo and Chu Yufei also showed smug smiles on their faces. Sister Yufei, this Luo Xiaoqi is dead for sure this time. It's ridiculous that she actually wants the Lien family of the Flying Star clan to help her. What a joke! Does she really think she's a beauty who can bring disaster to a country? She's an ugly man. Does she really think she's so charming that the young master of the Lien family of the Flying Star clan will help her regardless of everything? Chu Kuo covered her mouth and giggled. Her smile was full of malice. Hearing this, Chu Yufei also covered her mouth and giggled. Their smiles were indescribably bright and happy. Seeing Luo Qingtong suffer and be humiliated, they felt indescribably happy. Maybe young Master Luo Xiaoqi is confident. Chu Yufei's voice was soft. She had always been gentle and kind in front of others, but this time, she couldn't help but feel happy in her heart. Her words were full of contempt. She almost directly said that Luo Qingtong was shameless and felt good about herself. Haha. Hearing this, Chu Kuo couldn't help but laugh out loud. While the two of them were in a good mood, Chu Xiaofeng, Chu Jingyi, and the others were very surprised. Especially Chu Jingyi. Looking at Luo Qingtong, he immediately frowned. His little cousin had said that she wasn't an ordinary person and was very capable. Now it seemed that she was just an ordinary young man. She was actually so flustered when she encountered such a thing. Asking the Lien family of the Flying Star clan for help was no different from asking for humiliation. However, Chu Jingyi couldn't blame Luo Qingtong. After all, no one would be able to calm down in such a situation. Luo Qingtong was a young man with average strength and no reputation. She was also a mercenary with no background or experience. It was already very rare for her to think of asking the Lien family of the Flying Star clan for help. At least she wasn't scared to the point of tears and snot running down her face and begging Chu Yuqing for mercy. If that was the case, they would really lose face. It was equivalent to slapping the young master in the face. Thinking, Chu Jingyi immediately wanted to ask Luo Qingtong to stop talking to the Lien family of the Flying Star clan. After all, the other party would not provide them with any help. Instead, they would watch the show from the sidelines. However, before he could speak, Luo Qingtong's Luo's voice. Young master, you've misunderstood. Luo Qingtong's lips were light, and her smile was charming and demonic. Luo S's family of the Flying Star clan of the Flying Star clan. On the other hand, the Lien family of the Flying Star sector should be asking for our help. As soon as she said that, everyone's faces froze. Especially the Lien family of the Flying Star clan. They all looked at Luo Qingtong with strange expressions. Was this person crazy? Were they in such a hurry to help her? And begging her to let them help her? This was the biggest joke in the world. Not to mention that she was currently in a disadvantageous position against the young master of the Chu family. She was already doomed. Even if they weren't, they wouldn't be in such a hurry to help her, much less meddle in the affairs of the Tianfeng Chu family. Chapter 2636. By now, Lien Xingchen had retracted the hint of interest in his eyes. He frowned at Luo Qingtong. Was she trying to pester him endlessly? Did she think that a few words of provocation would make him help her deal with Chu Yuqing and the others? If that was the case, then there was no point in doing so. Lien Xingchen's expression was impassive. He'd originally thought that this extraordinary youth would say something astonishing. He'd been looking forward to it. He hadn't expected her to be so crude and scheming. As the young master of the Flying Star Lien family, Lien Xingchen had seen all sorts of schemes. Luo Qingtong's provocation was child's play for him. If you're trying to say that I'm afraid of Chu Yuqing, then you don't have to say anything else. As Lien Xingchen said this, He immediately wanted his men to retreat further to prevent Luo Qingtong and the others from dragging them into the trap of dealing with Chu Yuqing. But as soon as he raised his hand, Luo Qingtong said, "Is that so? If that's the case, then I wish the Flying Star Lian family a happy scapegoat. The crime of killing the young master of the Tianfeng Chu family is no small matter. Even if the Flying Star Lian family obtains the Tianluo grass, I'm afraid they won't be able to escape the wrath of the Tianfeng Chu family." As soon as Luo Qingtong said this, Chu Yuqing and the others' expressions changed. Even Lian Xingchen's hand froze in midair. "I don't understand what you mean." He looked at Luo Qingtong. His seemingly gentle, but actually sharp eyes focused on Luo Qingtong. Chu Lingfeng was killed by the Tianfeng Chu family. It has nothing to do with the Flying Star Lian family. Is that so? Luo Qingtong chuckled as she played with the invisible thread in her hand. She looked at Lian Xingchen and said indifferently, "Young Master Lian, do you believe me?" As she spoke, her glowing red eyes swept over Chu Yuqing and the others, whose faces had changed greatly. She laughed softly and said, "Chu Yuqing and the others killed Chu Lingfeng, although there was a reason for it, such as me. However, young Master Chu is the only son and successor of the family head. In order to find a scapegoat, they will definitely say that they only wanted to kill me. But for some reason, young Master Chu died. Why did he die? Of course, it was the Lian family of the Flying Star sector who did it. In this way, not only will they get rid of us, but they will also shift the blame to you. Isn't this killing two birds with one stone? What do you think, young Master Lian?" So, the corners of Luo Qingtong's lips curled up slightly. She looked at Lian Xingchen and the other Lian family members behind him, whose faces had already changed. They looked at Chu Yuqing and the others warily and unkindly. She chuckled softly and said, "You can only help us. And you have to help us. Otherwise, if we die without any evidence, then young Master Lian, the Lian family of the Flying Star sector will have no chance to refute this." As Luo Qingtong spoke, the birthmark on her face became even more devilishly charming. She looked at Lian Xingchen with a smile. "Young Master Lian, do you agree with me?" Luo Qingtong's face was impassive. She wasn't afraid that Lian Xingchen wouldn't help them. In fact, the moment she opened her mouth, she was already forcing Lian Xingchen and the others to help her. Perhaps in the minds of the Tianfeng Chu family members, it had never occurred to them to shift the blame for Chu Lingfeng's death onto the Lian family. Chapter 2637. Since she'd opened her mouth and laid out this possibility for everyone to see, Lian Xingchen had to make a choice. Gamble that the Tianfeng Chu clan wouldn't frame them, or directly intervene in this internal strife, and make the possibility of being the scapegoat disappear without a trace. Which one was more time-saving and 100% safe? Did he even need to choose? Helping them was Lian Xingchen's best choice. That was all he could do. It was a joke to say that she'd begged the Lian clan. Did Chu Yuqing and the others think they could force her to use the word beg? Pfft. If not for the fact that she didn't want to reveal her identity, she wouldn't even need to borrow the Lian clan's strength. Luo Qingtong looked at Lian Xingchen indifferently. On the other side, Chu Yuqing's angry voice rang out. "Nonsense. We never planned to do that. Luo Xiaoqi, don't even think about trying to frighten us. Young Master Lian, we will never implicate the Lian clan in this matter. We can swear." Before he could finish, Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows and smiled. "Oh, I heard that silently admitting to it is a very good method. This kind of forbearance, swallowing humiliation for the sake of the family head, is much easier than complaining before. Perhaps there won't even be a little bit of punishment. Impressive, impressive. Young Master Yuqing, I'm impressed. You're really good at scheming." Hearing Luo Qingtong's words, Chu Yuqing was so angry that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. "Shut up. How could this Luo Xiaoqi be so good at talking?" This was the first time in many years that Chu Yuqing felt so speechless. He couldn't even out-talk a young mercenary. He'd heard from Chu Ku'er and the others that Luo Xiaoqi wasn't easy to deal with. He'd snorted disdainfully before, thinking that this young man was nothing but a lowly mercenary. What was so difficult about him? Chu Ku'er and the others didn't have the ability, so did they think he was the same as them? Chu Yuqing was disdainful. He had always felt that Luo Qingtang had saved Chu Lingfeng because he was caught off guard, and she had taken advantage of him by surprise. Therefore, he did not put Luo Qingtang in his eyes. It was only at this moment that he realized that Chu Ku'er and the others were not lying in the slightest. This Luo Xiaoqi was really difficult to deal with. Moreover, he was extremely cunning. He suppressed his anger and looked at Lian Xingchen, wanting to continue explaining. However, the latter's voice had already sounded. "You're right." Lian Xingchen's gaze was deep. He looked at Luo Qingtang, knowing that he had underestimated this young mercenary. He originally thought that the other party was trying to provoke him into saving them. Who would have thought that while the other party was forcing him, he wasn't trying to provoke him at all. Furthermore, he was making it so that he couldn't refuse. Just as Luo Qingtang thought, she had already put the idea of framing the Lian family of the Flying Star sector on the table. Whether or not the Tianfeng Chu family had such an idea, Lian Xingchen had to be on guard against this last move. What use was Chu Yuqing's guarantee? Just as Luo Qingtang had said, sometimes silence was a very good way to frame someone. If he trusted Chu Yuqing, he might still be betrayed. But if he helped Luo Qingtang, he could completely nip this hidden danger in the bud. Chu Yuqing wouldn't have the slightest chance to frame him. Which was better? Did he even need to choose? This young man was really making him slap his own face. Lian Xingchen's face twitched as he thought of this. Chapter 2638. Luo Xiaoqi is under my protection. He was clearly saying that Luo Xiaoqi would be under his protection. But in reality, he was basically telling Chu Yuqing and the others that the Lian family of the Flying Star realm was going to intervene. He could forget about killing Chu Lingfeng. If all the members of the Lian clan of the Flying Star realm joined forces, they would be far stronger than Chu Yuqing and the others combined. Not to mention Luo Qingtang, Chu Lingfeng, Chu Jingyi, and the others. Chu Yuqing and the others were at a disadvantage. With a wave of Lian Xingchen's hand, all of the Flying Star Lian family's disciples and guards scattered in all directions, surrounding Chu Yuqing and the others. Once they attacked Chu Lingfeng and the others, the Lian family of the Flying Star realm would attack them as well. When the Lian family and Chu Lingfeng joined forces, Chu Yuqing and the others would be the ones to be wiped out. Seeing this, Chu Yuqing was so angry that he almost vomited blood. The smiles on Chu Ku'er and Chu Yufei's faces froze. What's going on? Luo Xiaoqi just said a few words, and the young master of the Lian family believed her. Is he stupid? Luo Xiaoqi was just lying to him. My big brother and the others didn't even think about framing him. Chu Ku'er was about to go crazy. She was about to have a great opportunity to kill Luo Xiaoqi. But after she said a few words, the young master of the Lian family of the Flying Star sector actually helped her. He helped her. Chu Ku'er and Chu Yufei had just been laughing at Luo Qingtang. But now, Luo Qingtang had turned the tables around beautifully. The more blood she wanted to vomit in her heart, the uglier her face became. However, Chu Yufei was very clear about the things that she didn't understand. She clenched her fists and looked in Luo Qingtang's direction with jealousy. The young man's scheming was simply too outstanding. He'd forced the Lian family to take action for something that hadn't even happened yet, all because he couldn't afford to gamble. The young master of the Lian family couldn't take the risk of being the scapegoat and allow Chu Yuqing and the others to attack Chu Lingfeng. So he helped Luo Xiaoqi. In his heart, he might have known that Luo Xiaoqi was the one who'd tricked him. But even if there was only a slight possibility, he could only help Luo Xiaoqi. No wonder she hadn't panicked at all, and even said that the Lian family was rushing to help her. Weren't they rushing to help her? Even if Luo Qingtang didn't want the Lian family's help, the Lian family wouldn't just stand by and watch. At least, not before they left the abandoned continent. Chu Yufei gritted her teeth as she thought of this. Luo Qingtang's move really slapped countless people's faces. Those who didn't believe that she could do all this and turn the situation around were all slapped in the face. While she was gritting her teeth, Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others suddenly realized what was going on. They looked at Yi Qianren, who was beside them. Master, you already knew about this? Knew that the demonic physician had a way to reverse the situation? Yi Qianxian's deep gaze pierced through the holes in his white jade mask and looked in Luo Qingtong's direction. His gaze was as deep as the sea and as deep as the abyss. I didn't know. His voice was slightly hoarse. He really didn't know that Luo Qingtong would use this method to resolve the crisis. This woman was always able to give him different surprises. Chapter 2639. Chu Xiaofeng and the others were already prepared to fight to the death. But then they heard Lian Xingqian's words. He then saw the Flying Star Lian clan members scatter and surround Chu Yuqing and the others. They immediately knew that they hadn't misheard. Luo Qingtong had really done it. She'd asked the Flying Star Lian family to help them. Not only that, she'd even begged the Flying Star Lian family for help. Chu Jingyi, Chu Xiaofeng, and the other members of the Tianfeng Chu family's 8th elder's line were all stunned. This Luo Xiaoqi. Chu Jingyi sucked in a deep breath. Only then did he come back to his senses. He understood how scheming Luo Qingtong was when she said those words. Perhaps in the eyes of others, Luo Qingtong's words seemed to have been made up at the last moment. But Chu Jingyi was one of the top disciples of the 8th elder's line. It was impossible that he wasn't scheming at all. Just like Chu Yufei, he quickly guessed the meaning behind Luo Qingtong's words. This Luo Xiaoqi was truly incredible. In such a short period of time, she'd actually managed to find a way out of this hopeless situation. And she'd done it so perfectly. Chu Jingyi definitely couldn't have done it himself. It wasn't that he couldn't think of Luo Qingtong's method. Perhaps he could, but it definitely wouldn't be so easy or simple. He needed time, but what they lacked the most right now was time. Chu Yuqing wouldn't give them time to slowly think of a solution. What awaited them was a fate of being strangled to death. While Chu Xiaofeng, Chu Jingyi, and the others were shocked, Chu Lingfeng didn't feel anything at all. In his opinion, Luo Qingtong's actions were completely normal. As long as his master was here, nothing would happen to him. Chu Yuqing and the others wanted to kill them? They were dreaming. He snorted coldly as he looked at Chu Yuqing and the others, his eyes already bloodshot. These people had attacked him again and again. That was one thing, but they actually dared to attack Luo Qingtong. She thought about what Chu Yuqing had just said. He wanted to kill Luo Qingtong. Chu Lingfeng felt a burst of madness in his heart. He glared murderously at Chu Yuqing and the others. Just as he was about to walk out, Luo Qingtong stopped him. No need. Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes. Naturally, she could tell what Chu Lingfeng wanted to do. This guy wanted to avenge her by killing Chu Yuqing and the others. However, although the Lian family of the Flying Star Planet had helped them, they were not on their side. Lian Xingqian wouldn't allow Chu Lingfeng to make a move against Chu Yuqing and the others. He didn't want to bear the crime of killing the Chu clan's young master, but at the same time, he wouldn't help Chu Lingfeng kill Chu Yuqing and the others. That would involve him in the Tianfeng Chu clan's internal strife. Thus, Chu Lingfeng wouldn't gain anything by making a move. Since that was the case, what was the point of making a move? If Chu Lingfeng wanted to deal with Chu Lingfeng and the others, there would be plenty of opportunities in the future. There was no need to rush now. Otherwise, why would Luo Qingtong want to use the Lian family of the Flying Star Planet to deal with Chu Yuqing and the others? Wasn't it because she didn't want to completely expose her abilities and strength? The heavenly grass had yet to appear, and she still had a use for Chu Yuqing and the others. Mas, Chu Lingfeng's expression was gloomy. He looked at Luo Qingtong with an unspeakable grievance and hesitation. He couldn't understand why his master didn't want him to make a move against Chu Yuqing and the others. Chapter 2640. His heart was stifled, but he couldn't disobey Luo Qingtong's orders. He immediately retreated, his killing intent filling the air. As for Chu Yuqing and the others, the moment the Flying Star Lian clan members surrounded them, they knew that it was impossible to kill Chu Lingfeng. Not only that, but they also had to endure the other party's terrifying revenge. Thus, the moment Chu Lingfeng stepped forward, they all tensed up and prepared to flee. But before they could do anything, Chu Lingfeng retreated again. His eyes were clearly filled with killing intent and viciousness. But he just looked at them and didn't make a move. It was as if a vicious beast had been put on a special beast-taming rope. It was abnormally tame and docile. Everyone was shocked. This was especially true for Chu Qiankong and the other top disciples. They knew how fierce and unreasonable Chu Lingfeng's temperament was. His personality was like two extremes. When he wasn't provoked, he was both foolish and straightforward. But once he was angered, he would immediately become as ruthless as a peerless vicious beast, vowing to tear the person who angered him to pieces. At that time, no one could control Chu Lingfeng, and no one could convince him. The top disciples had suffered many losses at his hands, so they naturally knew Chu Lingfeng's temperament. But they didn't expect him to be able to restrain his anger and not make a move. One had to know that one of them had deliberately provoked Chu Lingfeng and had almost been beaten to death. At that time, the family head and elders had come, but they couldn't do anything about the violent Chu Lingfeng. They didn't expect him to be so obedient to Luo Qingtong. Everyone's eyes almost fell out of their sockets. Only now did they realize how much influence Luo Qingtong had in Chu Lingfeng's heart. Damn it! If they'd known this would happen, they wouldn't have agreed with Chu Yuqing's words and attacked Chu Lingfeng. Chu Qiankong and the others were vexed. In fact, they didn't have to kill Chu Lingfeng. If they'd known that Luo Qingtong had such a great influence on Chu Lingfeng, why would they have taken the risk to attack? Wouldn't it have been better to find a way to befriend Luo Qingtong and control her, then use her to control Chu Lingfeng? They wouldn't have fallen to the point where they had to make an enemy of Chu Lingfeng. Fortunately, they hadn't taken the final step, and Luo Qingtong didn't seem to want to pursue the matter from just now. Could it be that she didn't want to make an enemy of the Tianfeng Chu clan? When everyone thought of this, they felt that this was probably the most likely possibility. After all, most of the members of the Chu clan who were present were with them. Chu Lingfeng wasn't afraid of them, and could even take revenge on them. But Luo Qingtong was just a small mercenary. They couldn't just ignore her, right? After all, although Chu Lingfeng was the young master of the Chu clan, it wasn't good to be infatuated with a man, and the elders of the Tianfeng Chu clan might not allow such a thing to happen. Was Luo Qingtong paving the way for her future? As everyone thought this, they suddenly understood. Chu Qiankong and the others breathed a sigh of relief. They hadn't directly participated in the attack against Luo Qingtong and the others. As long as Luo Qingtong didn't pursue the matter, and Chu Lingfeng listened to her, then this matter could be considered over. As they thought this, they immediately stepped forward and sternly shouted at Chu Yuqing and the others, "All of you stop! You're fighting among yourselves in front of so many people, and you even attacked the young master. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."